Okay, moving on to Director of Recreation and Facilities. Starting with the report on the airport farmland, the lease, and we do have Glenn Warwick in the gallery.
Yes, thank you. So in your package is a report giving some background information as well as a recommendation for the renewal of the airport land, farmland lease. And it's probably in our most challenging time to renew because the current market value of farmland leasing has gone so high over the last couple of years that it wasn't, our normal couple dollars and off we go. So Glenn has been extremely helpful in these discussions, and I know I've had direction from some counselors, assistance from counselors who are familiar with lease rates on farmland, giving me some feedback. I guess the real crux of this is to go to tender or not, and in our lease agreement with Mr. Warwick, we do give him first right of refusal on the land, and after discussing with our lawyers the best way to go about that, we suggested that he provide us a price that was at market value for council to consider. If council does not want to agree to that rate, then we would look at tendering and going out to the market to see if somebody wants to pay more. However, it's never a guarantee when we tender what price we'll get in at. We also don't know it also is questionable what tenant we'll get. And I can vouch for Mr. Warwick. He has been an excellent tenant. He has paid his land lease rates on time, and he treats the land very well. He's respectful of the airport and all that goes on there as well in working with him. So based on all of those things, I am making the recommendation that we renew at the rate he has offered, which is in the range of current market value. But I'm open to questions and comments from council, and of course you can direct your questions to Glenn through the reading.
So just a question, not knowing what fair market value is for land lease right now, can some of the councillors give us some range so we know?
Ray, do you want to answer that, or do you want
Well,
to?
I think when we're looking at $270, yeah, we're looking at that range. And I think we have a very good tenant, Glenn. I realize that. And Pat and I talked about it, and we talked about the tendering process. Because we're not talking small dollars anymore. And as council, is that the way to do business as council? Because we're talking $190,000 here now. 180, right? Am I wrong?
Over 3 years, yes.
Yes, right.
Over 3 years.
So,
I was
well,
like,
that's
wow,
what-
that was good, but over 3
That's
years,
right.
yeah.
So it is 190,000 or 185,000. So as a council, should we be putting it out for tender or not? So, and I think that's kind of what, and then Jim had some input into it too, Campbell, but $270 and a good tenant, that's fine. I have no problem with that either, but it's just the way council should be doing business. Or shouldn't be, isn't it? Because we're not talking $5,000 anymore.
Councilor Bailey?
When was the last time it was actually put out to tender?
I don't think that it has been in my time since 2006 been tendered. Glenn might be better to answer that, or Archie might.
I believe when the previous landowner left, Mr. John King, I think that it was put up at that point, which would have been, Glenn, how long ago was that?
2002.
I've had it 9 years.
9
This-
years. I was
this
going to
year.
say about almost 10 years. So it would have been done at that point. And I think at the time that it's been renewed, much like Pat has brought up, Glenn's been a very good steward of land and has been a fair VC and has worked well with the airport. I mean, my main concern is that fair market value, and it sounds like that is reasonable fair market value. You can go through a tendering process and end up with less than that too. I don't realize you don't necessarily have to take the tender that's submitted, but I think you just don't,
Well, the thing especially with commodity prices trending downward strongly, that corn's back below $6 a bushel now and stuff like that, and that definitely takes that upper end profitability out of it. And another thing, in having it within the territory, being that the airport's at the front of the property, that there's the restriction on not growing corn on the front end. That restricts the higher market value crop per acre, so that way we can't have right at the top end when you're restricting the viability of the crops grown. So that I feel that this is right in the area that gives the tenant a chance to carry on a reasonable business with a reasonable expectation of being able to have something out of it. Councillor Daly.
For me, it's not a matter of Mr. Warwick, whether he is or is not a good tenant. For me, it's a matter of, are we going to get ourselves in a legal bind here? That's a lot of money just to say we can go year after year after year. And I understand it's a very close-knit, or very few people are going to want the land. I understand that part. Having said that, I feel that we should be tendering it out. I think it's too much money just to go year after year after year. We don't do that. We should not be doing that with whether we buy tractors, graders, or what we're buying. And I don't think we should just say to somebody, you can do the town hall here for $375,000. We tendered it out. I believe we seem to keep slipping back into this comfortable, let's just leave as is, as is. And for me, it's not a matter of pricing. It's not a matter of how the ant lands it. You know, it's just a matter of good business policy. That's the only place I'm going with this.
Pat?
Thank you. And really, that's council's decision that's on the table here today, and I'm not going to influence you one way or the other. I am going to point out, though, in the report, under future considerations, if that is how council deems that it's appropriate we go forward, then I recommend we amend the lease agreement to take out that the current tenant has first right of refusal. Because I think that is where you could get into legal challenges. We have that in the tenant agreement, yet as council, we want to tender it out. And that's why I had to seek legal advice on this, to say, how do we honor both sides of that predicament? So perhaps you can decide what you want to do. This is the recommendation our lawyer made to us that we first offered to him, and then you can go to tender. But if council wants to, in future lease, take that clause out, that may clean things up for future discussions. That's just a thought.
Councillor Daly?
I'd also recommend that we do a 5-year lease. I think it's too much for somebody to put the equipment in, or a long lease. I have no problem with that, because you're putting a lot of money into equipment and a lot of time, and you've got to get things going. So I would prefer to do a lease, and I don't care the extent of the lease, but at least we tendered it out and did the proper thing.
Deputy Reeve?
Over a lot of years, I've dealt with a lot of farmers that have been renting a lot of land, and farmers that have rented their land out, and they've had good tenants and bad tenants. And I think that when we have a good tenant, I think it's a value that you can't put a price tag on, because the land, number one, is looked after. Number two, the tenant looks after you as well, in that he does look after the land, he does other things, he lives within our guidelines and pays the bill. Where a lot of other leases that I've seen over the years with other farmers, they rented their land out for more money, and at the end of the year they haven't got the check, and then 2 years later they still don't have the check. We have a good tenant that pays the bills and has come up with what sounds to me like a very, very reasonable price. And I checked with a couple of friends of mine that are farmers and what they're paying, and I disclosed this price to them, and they said that's good. So I would make a motion that we renew the lease with Mr. Warwick.
second
Kathy? Further discussion? Councillor Bodden?
I have a question about the legal advice that we received. How do you deal with this first right of refusal that says in the present agreement and going into tender? How do you bridge that gap?
So I discussed this with our lawyers, and how we're approaching this today, which is allowing Mr. Warwick to present to us a fair offer. But ultimately, it does state in the lease that the option to renew is within the leaseor's stake. I can read it. So it's really, in the end, what you would like to do. But we do want to give him the opportunity to renew, and if we have found him to be a suitable tenant, and he's offering current market value, that is, it's in our agreement that we are saying we would probably accept that. And that's where I'm getting at. We've done this first. If you decide to decline on that, Mr. Warwick would have the opportunity in a tender situation to resubmit. But if someone else puts in $1 more than him, then he would not be the one that would get the land. It would be strictly a dollar thing. It would not be, we would have no gauge to determine whether that farmer would be a good tenant or not until we've experienced them.
Just a follow-up question. So it would seem to me that if we were to honor that clause, if we received a bid that's higher than Mr. Warwick has given, he would have first right of refusal then to offer a higher price. Is that not true?
In speaking with the lawyers, we could handle it the way we've done it this way, or we could have done it that way, which was to put it out to tender and see what came in. And it's either or. You don't have to do both if you
It
choose to.
seems to me that would be the fair way to give him a
It
good
would be
chance.
for Mr. Warwick, but I guess the challenge was then for the farmer who did put the bid in and had the highest bid, to then tell them, I'm sorry,
Yes.
but you didn't get it.
I see.
We now have a farmer who's matched that. And so that's where no matter how we skin this cat, it's difficult. So I guess we went with I think a respectful way for Mr. Warwick to come forward with a good offer, for council to consider that, and then go forward from there with the tendering process.
Councillor Bailey?
Just a couple of questions. I'm going to presume this isn't for this year. You're already planted and going out for yet. The second thing is, when it comes to the highest bidder does not always have to be accepted, and that's put in every contract I've ever signed or dealt with. So if there was a $1 difference, and again, the money the man has invested in equipment, I can't see it. But I still think we should go back to the tender process. We're getting away from, and it's nothing to do with how well somebody does or what they've got going on or who they are. It's just a matter of, it's just good business policy. And can I get a record?
Okay. Any further discussion? Whenever you're ready, Kathy.
What's the
right.
motion again?
As in your report, Glen Warwick at the rate of $27 per acre for 2014, 2016. The motion's on the top of your report.
Kathy is going to, as soon as she's ready.
Okay. Bodden? Councillor Bodden?
Yep.
Sorry. I'm going backwards.
Oh, sorry.
Councillor Hallahan? Councillor McGowan?
Yes.
Councillor Bodden?
No.
Councillor Reach?
Yes.
I mean Deputy Reach?
Yes.
Councillor Bailey?
No.
Motion is passed.
Okay. Motion is lost. it would have tied, so that it would have lost. Pat?
So I guess what I'm looking for then is a motion that we would go to tender, and whether Brock wants to put forward his suggestion or not, but we don't need to within our legal advice. And then if I can get that motion, that would be, then staff can proceed.
Do you want a word of motion, Councillor Bailey?
I will try. I'd like to put a motion forward that we send the land to tender for the respective years we were talking about. But in that motion, I want it so that the lowest tender is not necessarily accepted.
Highest.
Highest is not necessarily
Sorry.
accepted.
Yes.
And that they provided such references. Okay, got caught up, Kathy. Okay, Councillor Vaughn.
Going back to my further point that I was making.
Point of order, we need a second.
Seconder.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You willing to second?
I'll second the discussion.
Okay, proceed with discussion.
It seems to me that it would be sort of hamstring the offer if we say that there is another bidder that could superimpose his bid on this deal. But on the other hand, I think that we have to honor the right of refusal in some way in how we handle this transaction. So I would like to follow that other option that Pat told us about in terms of if we go to tender and we have the highest bidder, Mr. Warwick would have the opportunity of going above that bid.
Going above or matching?
Yes.
Which? Going above?
Yes.
Offering more? I
You
think,
have a question, Councillor McGowan?
Just an observation,
Okay.
maybe an obtuse one, but I'll fire it out there anyway. No other tendering process that I have ever been involved in was precluded by a discussion in open session about a tendered or a suggested price on a contract. I just want to throw that out there. This makes for interesting
It's a good point.
scenario now.
That's a good point.
So, but by all means, go to town.
That basically, when we haven't accepted, the motion is wide open.
Oh, yeah.
As to Councillor Hallahan, did you have a question, or
It's way over.
Councillor Bailey?
I just won't accept the amendment to my motion, Brock spoke about it, simply has to be go to tender, and we have right of refusal. We do not have to accept the lowest,
Highest bidder.
highest bid. I'll get that straight for the next time.
Pat?
I guess I need some clarification on that statement, but we would not accept the highest bidder, and perhaps
Not
not
necessarily.
necessarily accept the highest bidder, because we have had legal advice before about that, and I would like Donna to comment on how we would, before you pass this motion, clarify that in the tendering process and state that in the tender document, that go ahead and bid, but we don't have to take the highest bid. So I want some clarity on that, and if, just on the second point, if Brock could clarify whether he means that Mr. Warwick would match the highest offer or have to offer 1 penny more. Just for clarity, because it's the tender document that I'll be back at my desk trying to create.
Councillor McGowan?
I think that in all deference to Councillor Body, he's trying to create a hybrid. I'm not sure you can in this situation. You have the current lease arrangement in which Mr. Warwick has first right of refusal. Council has decided to go in a different route now. I think it's one or the other. I don't think you can have a hybrid. Council always has the right to do with what it pleases, which also can trigger legal ramifications, possibly, or possibly not. So I don't think you can really just sort of mash the two together to get the best of both worlds. You've made your decision. As a council, we have, decided to go the tendering process. That's what you're left with. I'll leave it to the treasurer to comment on the tendering process and whether council could very well be stuck with a very good price and a very poor tenant, which would end up costing a lot more money in the end, but that's.
Agreed. Deputy Reeve.
If we go to the tendering process, I would like to see the people that tender to provide 3 references with their tender, plus a letter of credit.
Okay. Are we talking a strictly tendering process that is open to everybody that wants to tender, and that we evaluate the tenders as they come in? Or is there any going back? I think that if we're going to a tendering process, the motion to have anything tying back to the current is too much of the hybrid. We either do one or the other.
Just a point of order.
Councillor Lawden?
Just a point of order, we've already had a motion and it's been accepted.
Speaking of the motion, or your worship?
I'm speaking to the motion, and I'm looking to Councillor Lawden as to clarification.
Oh, you made that a motion, Bob? you
No,
didn't.
we're already discussing the motion.
Your worship,
We're
just
discussing
to
the
back up a
motion.
minute,
What I'm offering is to take out my exceptions, which
Okay.
obviously complicates things too much.
Okay,
And
okay.
So it's
That's-
strictly a tendering process.
That's in the process. So that cleans things up considerably. Do we want Deputy Reeves' comments as part of the motion?
Mover and seconder.
Mover,
Mover and second have to agree.
I like the motion just the way it was.
Call for a recorded vote.
okay.
You want the original motion?
What would we be voting on? So basically, it would be going to tender.
So that we enter into a tendering process for the rental of the airport land for 2014, 2016, with the lowest tender not necessarily accepted.
Highest tender,
I'm
not
sorry.
necessary.
I'm sorry.
I'm copying you with the highest tender not necessarily accepted.
Okay.
Do I make a comment?
Yes, you may.
I'm in favor of the Deputy Reeve's suggestion about references and the financial statement.
Letter of credit.
Are you agreeable?
I would refer that back to Donna, is that common practice? If it is, I'll accept it, I just never heard of that.
References, yes. The letter of credit, I'm not sure. Like for a construction job, we ask for a bid bond or an insurance certificate. For any land leases, I'm not familiar with it, but that doesn't mean that it's common practice if you had run into it before.
Deputy Reeve.
Yeah, because I was involved in the agriculture industry, there were a lot of feed contracts and land rental contracts that went out where credit references and a letter of credit was required.
Can I, with the Reeves' permission, can I just refer back to Mr. Warwick?
I think we're past that,
Well,
because that motion was turned down.
which one?
To
Oh,
keep him
oh,
as,
no,
that
no, I-
council has
I'll do this
said,
real quick.
the motion to go through with the 270 an acre
Yes.
for him.
That's,
Council has chosen to go with another motion to tender.
yes, okay,
So
Neil,
that,
I'll take that back, and I would like to ask Ray Hallahan, who's a farmer. When somebody's renting land out, and I know nothing about this, is there a lot of people renting land out? Because if somebody's renting land out, he just disqualified. He's got no.
I think, Pat, I think we should not be putting stuff into this tonight. Pat's gonna come up with a tender, Bernie, as to what people do, ask questions as to how the different scenarios are, Pat, right? That's for the
If I had clarity, I would.
money, or if it's-
Councilor McGowan.
Sorry, there are agreements, land agreements.
Yeah, I have, I mean, the lease agreement would be sampled into the tender, people would know what they're signing.
Exactly.
There would be a process, sealed bids by a certain date. There would be an opportunity for council to review those.
Yeah.
Is that what you're,
That's what I'm saying, so let's not get it complicated. The motion is now, there's gonna be tendered out. Pat's gonna look into the specs of the tender, right?
correct?
Yeah.
I'm just looking for, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna ask, I'd be interested to hear what, I'm getting an impression from Pat that she's a little confused how she's gonna put this tender document together. Am I
Yes.
reading more into? So it already in fact is more complicated now. So before I decide how I go about it, I'd like to know how that tender document's gonna look. So what you're gonna put in it.
well, there's no hurry, but basically, if somebody wanted to put forward a tabling motion till we can bring more information back to the table, having more information in place, that I would be willing to accept a tabling motion on this subject.
Your worship, point of order, I think you've got a motion on the floor, you have to, it would have to be defeated first before you can have a tabling
No,
motion.
you don't. You can table
Can you
it.
table it?
Table it
If the mover and the
anytime.
seconder agree?
Okay, I will table the motion.
Well,
Move a tabling motion.
I'll second.
Okay. We're done with that subject as of right now.
We'll just do.